The most pleasant way to tour France is by motor car, for one can visit with greater ease the more out-of-the-way spots, and in a minimum of time the many renowned areas of that lovely country. En route from the Pyrenees to Provence and the Mediterranean, one road passes the imposing 11th century castle of Foix, which in the past looked down upon the medieval capital of the Counts of Foix, and today stands in solitary grandeur over the smallest of the capitals of the departments of France. Continuing through the rolling hills of the Razes, between the Black Mountains and the Corbières, one is pleasantly surprised to suddenly come upon the great fertile plain of l'Orguez, in the center of which rises the majestic cité of Carcassonne. The thick walls and imposing towers of this magnificent ancient fortress, the like of which is not seen in the world today, rise above the river Aude, on the site where since early Roman days a fortress has guarded the communications between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. The cité, for such it is called to distinguish it from the lower town of Carcassonne, is encircled by two systems of walls, and with its 54 towers is unique as an example of a medieval fortress. It dates from the 5th century, when it was built on the ruins of Roman ramparts by the Visigoths, and by them it was occupied until the 8th century. It reached its greatest prominence during the period of its viscounts, the Troncovels, a dynasty founded in 1083, which ruled until 1209, when Carcassonne was united with France. In the year 1250, due to improvements in implements of war, Louis IX strengthened the fortress, and in 1280, Philippe le Hardi did likewise, with the result it was considered impregnable. In the latter 19th century, Viollet-le-Duc restored and preserved for posterity the historic walls and towers, which for nearly 15 centuries stood as symbols of strength and security. The famed cité is one of France's most cherished national monuments and is visited annually by untold thousands. North of Carcassonne and the Canal du Midi, a waterway connecting the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, and beyond the Black Mountains are great limestone plateaux known as the Corse, through which are cut deep canyons and remarkable gorges. The most famous of all these natural phenomena is the celebrated gorge of the River Tarn, easily reached either by motor over a splendid well-kept road or by boat through an extraordinary waterway. This river has cut its passage 37 miles long and in places over 1,600 feet deep between the Corse du Sauveterre and the Corse Mergent, and with its underground rivers and precipitous walls is easily one of the great natural wonders of France, a country abounding in wonders and lovely scenery. Leaving the picturesque upper valley of the Tarn and going south into Provence, the ancient provincia of Gaul, the road passes over the Pont Du Gard, one of the grandest Roman structures in existence. It was formerly part of a 25-mile aqueduct that carried water to Nimes. This really remarkable ancient bridge, 885 feet long and 160 feet high, with 52 supporting arches, although built entirely without cement, is so well preserved that even today part of the old structure is used for traffic. Nimes submitted to the Romans in 121 BC and became one of the chief colonies of Gaul. It contains more monuments of antiquity than any other town in France. The huge arena, one of the grandest Roman amphitheaters in existence, is still used in summer for operas, dramas, and bullfights. Most famous of the antiquities of Nimes is the Maison Carrée, one of the finest and best preserved of Roman temples, and the simple pattern of this little building has been copied throughout the world. On the left bank of the Rhone, not far from Nimes, is Avignon, also formerly an important Roman colony, but more famous as having been for 100 years the papal capital and rival of Rome itself. The Palace of the Popes, a severe structure with battlements and lofty walls, suggesting a castle rather than a palace, served as the residence of 7 popes, from Clement V to Gregory XI. Encircling the town are the well-preserved ramparts, built in the middle of the 14th century by Innocent VI and Urban V, and which today present another interesting example of a medieval fortification. The famous Bridge of Avignon, built across the Rhone during the latter part of the 12th century by Saint Benedict, has stood in magnificent ruin for nearly 300 years. A fine modern bridge spans the smoothly flowing river at Tarascon, home of that celebrated character created by the prolific pen of Alphonse Daudet, the beloved Tartarin of Tarascon. About 25 miles further down the historic Rhone stands Arles, a city rich in past glory, a city that was built by the immortal Caesar and became one of the most important towns north of the Alps. The huge arena, still standing and in fine condition, held over 26,000 spectators. The Roman theater has given so liberally of its marble for the building of churches that today little more than 2 grand columns remain. Much of its ancient stone was used in the construction of the Cathedral of St. Trophime, the west portal of which is world famed for its remarkable carvings. On the delta of the Rhone is Aigues Mortes, a town founded in 1246 by St. Louis. These walls are one of the great curiosities of France, for they are of one date and of uniform style. It was from Aigues Mortes that St. Louis sailed on his crusades, and it was the last bit of his beloved France that he ever saw, for on his last crusade he died of plague in North Africa. A statue of the sainted king rises from the center of the square. France is justly famous for its many beautiful tree-shaded roads. Along one we make our way to fabulous Marseille, the greatest seaport and second city of all France. Marseille, ancient Massalia, is the oldest city in Western Europe and was founded about 600 BC by Greeks from Phocia in Asia Minor. Its great prominence has always been due to its importance as a sea power, and although during its turbulent history it has changed hands many times, been sacked and destroyed often, and almost depopulated by plague, it has always remained, as it is today, one of the world's greatest seaports. Situated on a hill high above the city is the Church of Notre Dame de la Garde, whose belfry, crowned with a colossal statue of the Virgin, is a famous landmark for sailors. Though Marseille is an ancient city, practically nothing remains of its past. Its large buildings, fine streets and boulevards are modern in every respect. As in Paris and other great cities of France, many of the restaurants of Marseille occupy the sidewalks and frequently overflow into the streets. Shellfish are always in demand, even during the summer, and mussels are considered particular delicacies. One dines to music. Glace exquise, that's exquisite ice cream. The pride of Marseille is the Canebière, a broad boulevard leading to the old harbor, and lined for its length with fashionable shops, department stores, offices, hotels, and cafes. Since the construction of the splendid new harbor and docks, the old harbor is used only by yachts, small steamers, and pleasure boats. From here the boats leave for the Château d'If, that island fortress immortalized by Alexander Dumas' classic, The Count of Monte Cristo. The chateau for many years served as a state prison, housing within its grim walls such celebrated characters as Mirabeau and Philippe of Orleans. Today its forbidding walls and fearful dungeons hold no terrors, but stand silent and peaceful in the beautiful bay of the greatest port of France.